As summer progresses, that spring burst of high quality, high protein growth begins to wane. Plants get old, they get mature. And, it's the new green growth that deer uh, prefer most because it's the highest quality. Deer have an uncanny ability to detect in a plant which not only which plants, but which parts of those plants are the highest quality. That's why when they come across a pokeweed plant or whatever it is, ragweed in the summer, they'll bite parts of it. They'll bite on a blackberry plant. They'll take off the new green growth that's just unfurling. That is the most tender, digestible, and highest protein part of the plant. They'll bite that. They won't sit there and eat the entire blackberry plant. They'll bite off the best part and move on to the next thing. And so as that stuff gets old and mature and tough, as summer goes on, there's less and less of that, the best parts of the plants available. That's where your habitat management can come in, doing things that create new growth throughout summer, like fire, like disking and other things that sort of set the clock back on natural plant growth can inject and rejuvenate available protein in the middle of summer when it's starting to drop.
That's really cool. That makes a lot of sense too. So I had my first burn experience last year. We don't get any of that in Ohio that I'm aware of anyway. I'd never found a burn in my life here. Never heard about really anybody doing it. And then I started hunting Kentucky, Indiana, and all these other states, and then talking to guys like yourself, and they're talking about fire, fire, fire. And I'm like, what? And I was scouting last year, and I found an area that had been burnt. Didn't hurt the trees, anything like that. I'm picturing a burn where it looks like a forest fire or something.
Wildfire, right.
And it's not that. It was that essentially the ground was almost bald, like it got rid of all the dead, useless stuff that's basically drowning everything out, I would assume. And man, I could already, it was a couple weeks old. It was not old at all. And I could already see in early March, when it's still cold here, little green sprouts popping up. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Well, I came back in the summer and the feed sign on those plants, like everything was so just green and lush, like I'd never seen in a meadow. Oh, that's all it is. And the feed sign was just unbelievable. I hadn't seen feed sign like that in a bean field. It was incredible. And the amount of diversity was crazy. And then, you get into paying attention a little more, and you're seeing all kinds of butterflies, all kinds of songbirds, and just that foundation with all that native browse really, really kind of shines through. But that's some pretty good info. Would you mind? I kind of feel like I know a little bit about this, but I just want to kind of hit on everything as best I can, and maybe I'll learn some new things and then have somebody else learn. So it's to my understanding that the majority of a whitetail's water intake is oftentimes from their browse, but I would assume this time of year it's probably not correct. Or did you want to kind of touch on their hydration, how important that is this time of year? Anything you know about it anyway?
So that process of this time of year, that process of digesting woody browse, that, dormant woody forage or rough stuff that they eat in winter, not only produces heat, it also produces water. So again, they're sort of getting a lot of their water needs from that digestive process from that browse, even though that browse doesn't have as high a water content as green forage in the spring and summer. It's still got some, and their digestive process releases that. So they have lower needs than you might think to drink surface water in winter. Same thing in the rest of the year. They get, like you just said, they get most of their water needs met through the forage that they're consuming. That green forage has high water content in spring and summer. So they're getting a lot of that. Now, late summer, that forage is rougher, more mature, not as much water content, and it gets drier. sure, that's when, they'll begin to use surface water a lot more than they normally would. But throughout the year, it's not critical for them to have, surface water even in winter, because they're getting a lot of the water needs met through the food that they're eating.
Okay. Wow. Never putting a camera on a water hole ever again. Oh,
No, no, no. I mean, like I said, at certain times they will come to it. Certainly, particularly in arid areas like the Southwest, Texas, and
oh,
western portions of
absolutely.
Deers Range, where it is drier. And during the drier portions of the year, yes, when water is scarce, they will definitely come to it. But in eastern states, there's generally, so much surface water available, or rainfall happening regularly enough, and B, so much green forage that they're not as attracted to surface water.
I should have added east of the Mississippi to that statement, because that's definitely you want to find whitetails on the other side of the big river, just find literally any water source,
Yeah,
and they're there.
yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
And the same is true because in those areas, that forage doesn't have as much water content as it does in more eastern states with more rainfall.
Makes a lot of sense. Man, this is really good stuff. So I guess let's kind of proceed a little. I kind of want to talk a little bit about nuts right now, if you can. I mean, we've pretty much hit on just about everything else. So there's a couple things that I had questions on, because I find a lot of feed sign around the red oaks and the
Yes.
chestnut oaks here. The bases of the trees are dug out and everything. Would you classify that still as a more of a woody browse, or is that something that's different?
Yeah, acorns are going to be, that's sort of a fat source. They're
Okay.
high fat, which is, that helps them put on fat in the fall, which is why they're going to those when they're falling in the fall. White oaks, all acorns in the white oak family, there's a lot of tree species in the white oak family other than just a quote white oak.
Sure.
And all the oaks in that family produce acorns that are lower in tannic acid than the red oak family, and so they're less bitter, and that's why deer tend to go to them first. If you've got white oaks falling near a red oak tree, deer are probably going to the white oak first and eat them first. Well, the good thing is white oak acorns don't last as long on the ground. Number one, they generally start put out a taproot and put that down fairly early and go ahead and store. They don't necessarily start growing a sapling or sprout until spring, but they'll definitely start putting out a taproot, and pretty soon they're unavailable. And those that don't sprout and kind of go down into the ground rot pretty quick because of those low tannic levels.